Hi, hi everyone. Welcome to the AI Forward Group podcast. I'm very excited to have Eli Schragenheim with us today. Eli Schragenheim. We're going to be talking about um, AI in enterprise and big businesses, and why 95% of Gen AI deployments are failing, according to MIT. So Eli has a long background in the theory of constraints. He co-authored a book called Necessary but Not Sufficient with Eli Goldratt on ERP systems and why their implementations weren't working as well as they could have been, and has since published many books on throughput accounting, on how on simplified theory of constraints, as well as the interactions of technology and business. Um, and I'm very excited to have Eli shed his insights on the current boom in the technological sphere with AI in almost every business. Um, and AI is different than everything else to some degree, but it's also enmeshed in the same context of implementation, the same context of prioritization and politics that happens in businesses and fear. Um, so I'm very excited to see how well the old solutions to ERP and other technologies are going to apply to AI, as well as what fresh thinking will be required to really tackle this technology. So with that, I would like to welcome Eli and get us going. Eli, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Sheikh.
And Eli, of course, you're one of the titans of this space, and it's a great pleasure to talk to you. Um, I recall you were laying out some frameworks about how to think of technology in companies and what are the gaps and challenges when deploying it. Did you want to start there, or what would you want? How would
Yes,
you?
I think it, first of all, we speak about technology, including AI, for management, ma- managing organizations. And kind of observations that I have, especially here, is that we are currently in a situation in which the development of new technologies, definitely AI, but not only AI, are developed in such a speed that the human intelligence cannot really cope with it all that well. We are restricted with our, I called, management attention capacity. So we can be geniuses, but how fast we can understand and use and be effective, we cannot think about everything. We cannot decide about everything. So we need to focus. We need to choose. We need to see what are the real issues and even forget of the smaller issues. This is generally quite a lot of the philosophy of the theory of constraints, in which I had the honor to be part of, and I really think it could bring huge value as a kind of philosophy and knowledge to all management. And when it comes to technology, we need to understand that every technology, on one hand, can bring value, but we need to define what value at what point of time, again, so it will not disrupt other things that are so important and will not cause quite a lot of bad effects, because a new technology can be also very bad for us and for the organization, can do quite a lot of damage. So we need to see what we need it for, focus on it. This is what we like it to give us, and then try to do it. Dr. Goldratt, the founder of the theory of constraints, came up pretty late in his life to define 6 questions in which relate he claimed it mainly, or he aimed it mainly to technology. I try to generalize it even more than just technology. But let us speak about technology in order to really focus ourselves as management. And so there are 6 questions that the management needs to come up with some critical answers. And it takes the sides, start with the technology itself, like what is the power of the technology, which for me means what are the boundaries? What can I do? And also, what are the boundaries? Like, also tell me what it cannot do. Okay, make me see the boundaries. This is the first question, and this is the only one that is mainly technical. The second question is already a key that should be asked all the time, which means what is a current limitation that the new technology can either eliminate or at least significantly reduce. This is a very important question to ask, which you say, the value of the new technology, I mean, just to learn it is already kind of a damage. I need to put time and I need to put my subordinates' time into it. I don't like to do it unless it brings me value. When it does bring value, it means that currently we have a limitation that because of it, we don't achieve enough value. There is something that blocks us, and now the technology help us to overcome it and do something that we could not do before. So this is a value. We are not looking on to rate how much value it is. It's up to the people asking the question and coming up with the answers to also relate to this. Is it really important or not so much? But first of all, let us see that there is value. It brings us something that we did not had before, or in order to achieve it before, we had to go into all kinds of ways. Which, by the way, leads the way to the question number 3, which means look on what the current, how do we deal now with that limitation? Because we are creative people, we find ways to sort of bypass the limitation. I can give you an example because I'm old enough to have seen the huge change that the cellular phone brought to us. Because before, when I was on business trips, etc., many times I had to look for something like public phones, or I had those beepers that will tell me at least that someone else is looking for me, but I am not available because I am not in my office. This was probably the very first limitations that the cellular phone just say, take it and you are over it. Later, by the way, it was fully understood that there are so many other things that it can do. Now, looking for this kind of thing, maybe if I'm just looking for, I don't, suddenly realizing I don't need a cell phone I don't need a public phone anymore, and I don't need to ask for favors from the business who have me right now to use their phone. But then again, everyone who wants me can do it immediately, right now, and I can also call anyone that I suddenly feel that I need to. So how? Please understand how it was overcome by a little bit public phones, and beepers to give a very partial part. But then came a question number 4 that says, look, when you come now with a new technology and people already are used to do certain things, in many times they are not going to just stop the other things, they are going to use this, and they are not going to really exploit the new values that your technology is bringing them. So I assume, I mean, I did not check, that for 2 or 3 years into the development of the cellular phone, people had also beepers, first of all, just to be certain, or we are used to it. So instead of calling you and I'm not sure where you are and what you are right now occupied, I can still send you a message. By the way, this idea a little bit later came into the cellular phones in order that you can send your message, not just call, but just send a message. If you are in a meeting, you don't need to be suddenly troubled by your phone calling. Quite a lot of things also that there was not enough, if I look backwards, thinking about what the cellular phone can bring. Let me bring you that suddenly I realized that I can make a value from it. Because at that time, let us say about 93, 94, my younger daughter, she was in her teens, I mean, something like 14, 15, and she sometimes vanished from us, which means we as parents, we didn't know where our child is. And suddenly it occurred to me, the cellular phone was sold to us as if it is only for business people, because this was the most immediate limitation that this could have gained. And then now I, just as a very worried father, can think the hell I like to give my daughter a cell phone. So I can call her. And once I had this idea, I suddenly thought, why the cellular phones companies did not think about it? How come? They should. And if they would have looked for the question, I believe that they would come with answers. Right now, I covered briefly the first 4 questions. And the 5th one, it went through some changes, is really you need to come up with all the reservations that people might have when you come with your new technology. Because you like to face those and either eliminate the damages that they suddenly raise, you need to find a solution for it. And this is again an extremely, for me, an important lesson. For instance, if just take AI, and now at least most people understand that sometimes AI gives you erroneous answer. So this is a huge reservation. I mean, if 9 of any 10, let us say, questions that I ask AI, I'm getting a very good answer, but sometimes I'm getting a very wrong answer, I need to be very well aware of it and find the way to ask myself whether the answer I got is right or not. And you absolutely need to make it happen. So question 4 and 5 are really from the look on the user. 4 is make sure, by the way, that the user understands the full amount of the value and really how to use it right, how you get the full value and you are not stuck with something you were used to because of the former technology and now you don't need to. Again, at some time in the 90s, there was a management movement called um, engineering, how it was. mm, um, Anyway,
Not agile and this sort of thing.
no, it was speaking about that with the rise of the computer, especially the microcomputers, you don't need forms on paper. You can click the forms into the computer, but you can see, but the idea of forms, maybe it's all, we don't need the forms as forms. We need information. In the old way, where we needed to put it on paper, we had to have a good paper into it. Now, when we are in the computer, find what the computer absolutely needs to know and don't do it like you did and just you move the questions from the paper to the computer. It was called, no, not reverse engineering, even though, okay, I forgot the name, sorry. Those questions are really critical. Question number 6 is really pushing you to look on the strategy of your organization as a whole again, giving the new technologies that you are employing, that now, let us say, you already understand the value, you understand what the user needs to know and how the user should operate in the best way in order really to take the full value from the new technology. And you have also addressed all kinds of other reservations that this, that you might face. Okay, and sometimes, just for instance, again regarding AI, and suddenly there are reservations about how AI can preserve the my own rights of my own things that I have did. How can it protect me? How it protect if I've created, I written a book, that it will not just steal my ideas, will never mention me, etc. So we do have certain rights, and we don't like to give the license to AI just to disrupt them. So all of these are part that needs to be taken into account. Please see that when you go through the 6th question, you speak more than the technology itself. You speak about how to get used to it. You speak about what are the negative parts of it. And now in the last question, you need to speak how this should be part of our strategy. So if, for instance, because of we can lay off so many workers, there could be, for instance, a reservation that the public as such are not going to like it. So even if we speak about a huge giant and they are simply taking this as an excuse to really fire so many workers who dedicated their life and career so far to that company, this is something that aesthetically and morally we don't like. So they need to think about it. This is part of their strategy, keeping their image in a way that clients will continue to love them, etc. Okay, I just gave some examples. Thinking about, you look on the 6th question and they look simple enough and okay, can be covered very fast, but giving them answers is not easy, and you need to do it from the days that you start working on the technologies, that you know what you like to achieve, but you still did not fully achieve it. And definitely, if you, as a management of a organization, you buy this, ability, a new technology, and you like to put it in, and you need to think about all the details of your company and what are the ramifications of it. So actually, you need to look far beyond the technology and what exactly it does. You need to look on the whole organization, which takes time, but you should do it.
So, Ellie, this is wonderful way to sort of frame the conversation. I'm just going to again recap the 6 questions. I have the document in front of me for our audience to summarize what you said. So again, the 6 questions, actually, Ellie and Kier and Goldratt together came up with them for necessary but not sufficient. And then Ellie, as I understand, you expanded on them further and refined them. So the questions arose in reference to millions of dollars that were being, or tens of millions that were being wasted with ERP implementations that weren't really adding value, or that the value that was realized was different than the value that was expected.
Yes.
And so the question was, why was this occurring, and how would one sort of foresee how to do it better, when to do it, etc. And so these 6 questions are really the ways in which you can really understand which technologies are worth adopting and in what manner to adopt them. I.e., that if it's worth adopting, then you still need to look at your organization as a whole and define where it can be adopted and what the returns would be. And in this document, that perhaps we'll make available in conjunction with this episode, there are 2 examples: a non-rechargeable battery that lasts longer than a regular battery, and also a word processor that has a couple of unique capabilities. So take the non-rechargeable battery, for example. Let's go through the 6 questions, right? So what is the power of this technology? The power of this technology is that it lasts 200 times longer than a regular battery. Great.
Yes.
Simple. What is the current limitation or barrier that this illuminates? Well, for batteries that are hard to recharge, let's say, or where recharging is inconvenient, this should be very handy. Now, what examples would we have of batteries where recharging is
Look,
something
the
that's,
real
yeah,
value there is I I don't use the batteries directly. I use the batteries as part of certain devices that I use,
correct.
like my cell phone, camera, etc. When suddenly my batteries are dead, oh, I am in a problem. I have a device that right now cannot work. So, but if I will have this kind of batteries, yes, it could still, but if I can use my device for the next 50 years, I don't care more.
Yeah. So fundamentally, it's reducing the frequency of it going down by 200 times, essentially, right?
Yes,
Which is a huge differentiator, right?
yes,
So we say, okay, what technologies that use batteries would be significantly enhanced or some of their problems reduced if they had batteries that lasted 200 times longer, i.e., they're not going to need servicing 200 times longer. Further, there are going to be devices that it was not feasible to run on batteries, that now that the batteries are lasting 200 times longer, those devices would now become feasible, because you say, well, with 200 times longer batteries, with regular batteries, the rechargeable ones, maybe it would have worked for 2 or 3 minutes, right? Now it's going to work for 200 minutes, which is like 3 hours plus. And suddenly that device now becomes feasible. So that's another way in which it reduces or eliminates a current limitation. Okay. Number 3, what usage rules, patterns, or behaviors today exist that consider the limitation? Now, this is the invisible stuff that is taken for granted based on the limitations of the earlier technology. So again, in the context of this battery, we already discussed some devices would never have been used or built because they were not feasible. That would be one limitation. Is
absolutely.
suddenly and AI is actually more similar to batteries in some, because it is an enabling technology. So we want to think about it, and that there are things that were just not possible before, and we will give examples that AI can now do, similar to this. The battery is a simpler example. Okay, what rules, patterns, or behavior needs to be changed to get benefits of the new technology. So once we've identified what the old ones are based on the old technology, what do we need to change based on the new technology? Where would we start wanting to use these batteries?
Okay.
Where were machines getting stopped? Or maybe we were putting 10 batteries into a machine because we really needed it to last. And now we can put one battery instead of 10. So we can maybe reduce form factor, or we can put in other things that, because our battery's gone up to 100, not 10x. And that's a fundamental shift. Um, and then number five is, what is the application of the new technology that'll cause the above change without causing resistance? So
Yeah.
this is important. There are many applications of new technologies, including AI. But let's take this battery, but some of them will cause resistance. Maybe we would have to spend millions of dollars replacing old equipment with this new battery. Even if that's profitable in the long term, in the short term, cost accounting considerations would make
Right.
it very difficult. Uh,
Right.
Instead, the recommendation would be to find areas where you can prove value, maybe some greenfield projects, where you can really demonstrate the power and use and profit of this new technology, and over time take it to some of the other areas where there would have been more resistance. But it's very, very important to take the organization as a whole, to take the history of it, and figure out where you can actually successfully get enough momentum to do it. Because most projects die because going from pilot to actual deployment, that's where most of them are dying,
True.
including in AI. So that's what this question addresses. The final question is, how do you build, capitalize, or sustain the business, right? So you have a new technology that's fantastic. Your competitors are going to have it too. And also, because you have this new technology, it is a leap forward, but it's not a leap forward uniquely to your business unless you have IP on it. So how are you going to create a sustainable business with this new technology as a baseline, right? No, it is not a competitive advantage in the future. This will become the baseline reality. So how do you build a business on top of this? How do you shift things that you're doing? How do you continue to do what you were doing? But you really have to go back to looking at the fundamentals of your business.
Like, as you see,
I'll say one thing, Ellie, and that. So there have been examples of banks that have said, we're not a bank that uses technology, we're a technology company in the banking sector. So this is the proper realignment around this question of, when you have a sufficiently powerful new technology, fundamentals of your business change. Perhaps the way you conceptualize the bedrock of the business can also change. So that's a quick summary of those six questions, and Ellie and I will discuss it further, and then we'll talk about AI.
okay, good. But notice one thing. Uh, Even with this example of the very long life batteries, you can speak about the strategy from the producer point of view, the one who came up with a new technology. But I can also ask myself, I as a user of devices, which device I like to buy those batteries that naturally are much more expensive than the regular batteries, and which one, well, the damage that I have from time to time that the batteries start to be dead are not all that big, and I have always some spare batteries near me or something like this. So forget it. It's not worth it. So more than one organization, when there is a new technology coming in, should ask those questions, the developers of the technology, but also the immediate customers who might like to think about whether to buy this technology and use it. And this will come also when we speak about the AI. There are the developers and there are the users. And both need to look on the question, and the answers could be pretty much different.
Absolutely. So these questions are a way to prompt thinking about the technology. Now, they're not sufficient unto themselves, but they're definitely a great starting point to start to evaluate and think deeply about these things. They would, of course, be combined in the theory of constraints, well, with certain thinking processes that help you map out assumptions, that help you think through conflicts, etc., within each of these areas. But they would be a starting point. Now, this the reason we go through this, and the reason we bring it up, because just like in the ERP days, in the current AI days, we're having the same problems. The problems are, this is per MIT's newest report, while 70% of companies, big companies, are trying to adopt AI, only about 10% are getting value that's measurable. So that is an incredible failure rate, and it's wide across the market. Okay. Um, so when the majority are absolutely failing to derive value from AI, we begin to ask ourselves, why is this occurring? Does the technology not work? No, of course the technology works, but is it being considered in the right ways, and is it being applied to the right areas, and is it being considered in the context of the whole organization? We can't put in 200 times longer batteries. Just we can't just switch our batteries without thinking of what effects it's going to have. It's not a simple matter of just switching the technology. We also have to look at what are the consequences, both good in terms of new opportunities, but also in terms of change that will have to be made. Maybe some trade-offs that are part of the new technology, and maybe we need both old and new technology in different places. That's usually the case. Yeah.
Yes. I like one even to add to you. You are saying that only 10% of the companies are really making value. But I can even challenge this. Great, they are making value. Is it the best value that they could get theoretically or not? This is kind of another question, but maybe they could get so much more value if they would ask the question a priori and uh, ready to really use it in order to get huge value instead of nice.
Yes. I think this is crucial, right? Because while they're above zero, let's say in terms of their ROI, how close are they to what the potential upside of this technology is? And when we're hearing reports of individual developers saying they could be 20 times more productive, 100 times more productive, sometimes at least for some of their work, but organizations are seeing zero measurable ROI by 90% of them. The median is a zero. We have to ask, where does the discrepancy come from? How can individuals within companies be using AI heavily, be seeing a lot of value, and the company as a whole is not realizing value? Surely it's quite puzzling, and that's where we want to look at not just the 6 questions, but also the organization as a whole. And Goldratt had a beautiful idea of looking at the throughput or the flow through a company, where we look at where he said the crucial reason why local improvements in companies, i.e., some individual being 10 times more productive, why they don't translate to a global improvement, is because most companies have one, and usually only one, bottleneck. And that bottleneck, now it could be a company-wide bottleneck. There's ways to think about that. It can be a management resource constraint. It can be attention-based. There could be a cash constraint on the company that until you have enough cash coming in, you can't really do stuff. But typically, coming from manufacturing and things like that, there is usually a part in the business that is slow. Especially the bigger the business, the more likely it is that there will be one singular bottleneck. The smaller business, the harder it is to identify, but the bigger the business, the more likely there will be one bottleneck. Because when complexity multiplies, and there is very, very complex production scheduling, whether it's for goods or services, there are going to be these hidden places that are causing these bottlenecks. Now, so long as what we're doing has some impact on that bottleneck, we will see some improvement. Okay, and even if we're shooting in the dark. But if it has no impact on the bottleneck, it will have no improvement. Now, this concept does simplify things a little bit too much, and we can sort of talk about how other ways to look at it. But take the idea of this bottleneck. If you've not identified where the bottleneck, or even if you feel like there are multiple, where they are in your business, it will be very, very hard. And again, the bottlenecks are not always rate of production. Bottlenecks could be rate of innovation. Bottlenecks could be around marketing, bottlenecks could be around sales. But ideally, in a company, the first thing you have to do is identify your goal. This is across the organization. What is the goal of our company? Obviously, you want to make money, and then you want to look at like what is the like how would you measure what things get you towards that goal? And if you can operationalize making money as free cash flow, how do you maximize the amount of free cash flow that's coming in every week, every month, etc. Then you can start to look at the whole company and say, okay, what are the things that are contribute like how like what are the things that are leading to it, and then what is the constraint on that, what is the bottleneck, what is the thing that is the determining rate limiting step in terms of the amount of cash flow that we're able to generate. And once you've identified that, uh, Goldratt has a bunch of steps that you could do. But the other important thing is once you've identified, you want to, if it's an external bottleneck, i.e., the market demand or something, you want to work on that to the point where it comes inside the business and it becomes an internal bottleneck so that you can, to your best ability, control that bottleneck so you can determine the rate at which the whole company should be moving. Because if you do not have a bottleneck, and it's bottlenecks sound bad, but they're actually good. If you do not have a bottleneck, you have a company where you cannot predict how fast you can. You will have way more volatility. You cannot predict how fast you're going to produce things. You cannot predict fluctuations that may propagate across the company, et cetera, et cetera. So once you've identified that bottleneck, you want to try to get it internal to your company, so it's in your control. And then you want to map out the whole company relative to that bottleneck and start to look at how does this new technology help us in terms of elevating the bottleneck or reducing the constraints that are feeding into the bottleneck. Um, but essentially, how does this elevate? Because an hour lost at the bottleneck is an hour lost at the whole company, but an hour gained at the bottleneck is also potentially an hour gained at the whole company, depending on the rate of flow of the rest of the organization. So that's some of the ways in which to contextualize it more broadly. But Eli, I'm sure, has a better way of framing this than I have.
No, I don't like to reframe it a little bit differently. This is not the real issue. I like to add another huge element, and this is how management deal with what I call common and expected uncertainty, because this started to be quite a lot of a killer. Look, suppose you are simply garage fixing cars for customers, and you promise someone, please come at, let us say, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and your car will be ready. But then quite a lot of things happen. Suddenly you find a part that does not function well, and you don't have it in store, and you need to get it from somewhere else. And then there are something new that you did not look. And then one of your workers made a mistake, and they need time to bring it back. Uh, and those small deviations, they accumulate, and they cause you a huge amount of trouble throughout the day. Certainly throughout the week, throughout the month. Every organization is impacted by it. And people try to deal with it with forecasts that are usually one number forecasts. And then they can go to the bottleneck and really plan very carefully what the bottleneck should do. But please see, this was a forecast, a guess. I forgot to tell you that it could be 12% lower or maybe 15% more, and it does not go nicely even throughout the week or the month or all kinds of those kind of things. You need answers to this, and TOC comes with answers. But quite a lot of the answers we come are basically, I would say, eventually the intuition has to lead us. Here comes for me a huge potential value of AI. I like AI to improve my own intuition. By much, And I like AI when I predict just a little what will happen tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, etc., to give me not just one number, but a little bit of the range of might happen. And then my decisions will be much, much, much better. So I need the AI as an assistant to myself taking extremely important decisions. Commitments that I make to my clients, commitment I'm making to my workforce, and maybe even including kind of technology like asking AI, I mean, kind of crazy question. What are the chances that an enemy will go into your IT system because your cyber is not perfect and disrupt or steal from you all the data of your clients, and they are going not to like you at all for it. So even these kind of judgment, maybe in the future, we can get help. But I need to tell AI developers, look, fellows, this is important. And like I say, I come from management, and there are quite a lot of management questions, even when they do understand the role of the constraints or bottlenecks as you have defined it. And even if they already understand the need for time buffers, which should make my commitment so much more reliable. Generally speaking, I still need quite a lot of assistance in many things. Let me give you one more. First of all, Goldratt, by the way, claimed that the ultimate constraint is management attention. This is a very interesting remark. The ultimate means after you are really good and you are looking and you know what is a bottleneck and how to operate things, but you cannot think about everything. So you need to know what to focus on. You see, helps quite a lot in doing it. What I like very much AI to do is to look for things that naturally I'm not looking for them. They are not in my focus area, but sometimes they start to become serious, and then I need suddenly to put my attention to them, like new emerging threats. And there are threats in the supply, and there are threats in the market, and there are quite a lot, a variety of threats that AI could easily, to my mind easily, point to me that the behavior of something has changed, which could be a signal that something is going wrong. So find out what it is and protect yourself from it. Maybe it can do even more about it. This is a whole area that could be so much more important. Look, you already mentioned a little bit about what we use AI for, and it looks to me, generally speaking, that the key use of AI is to reduce costs. Many times to reduce the cost of manpower. So,
This is a current attempt. This is what people are trying to do
right.
because from the cost accounting world, and this is fundamentally what I think is creating the problem. And I'll get into that, but I like that you pointed to that.
Okay, but the thing is this, that I need to find out some kind of answers for what AI can do to me that I could improve sales. Because if I don't have an internal bottleneck, then I would love to have more sales. If I can have more sales, but I still have a bottleneck, maybe I can now focus on that market sector that gives me so much more relative. So I will give up some of my current market and I will go mainly to this. But I need this kind of suggestion, let us say, to say what I need to do. And in sales, there are so many questions that I believe that with the statistical abilities that AI has anyway, it can be used in a huge way to help me. Look, if I'm a distribution company and I'm opening now a new store in a new city or environment, and one of the questions is which SKUs, I mean items that I'm selling, what to store for this location, because probably it's not exactly the same as another location. And if the AI has quite a lot of data on this location versus other location to see, they can tell me much more than what I can take a manager that maybe is familiar with this location and try to rely on his or her intuition. This could be much better if they get this kind of observation. So what I like to tell you, from my knowledge of management, there are a number of problems that answering each one of them could bring huge value. And my initial belief is, from what I see, is that AI can be used to help here. And this could be very substantial. So the two questions are really, from the AI point of view, what to develop now in AI that would definitely bring value and they know which market sectors. But also from the market sector point of view, how to analyze. I have my IT people and they really like to come up on AI in a big way. What is good for the company and what not for now? Well, maybe in 5 years from now, but not for now. This is a big question. And I think analysis should be given to it because AI is here and will be here. And it will be used more and more. But I like to shorten the way and the huge suffering of not being able to come up with the right answers at the right time and just use AI for things that brings a little bit value, but not much. But we have invested it so much, and it's not only money. It is the manpower that needs to use this AI and how to teach the users, my people, to do it right, not wrong. And then there is certain value, great. No, I want huge value. And from my management point of view, I can tell you my wishes. Let us say, if I can enter this market segment with something really new, this will be huge. But tell me what it could be. Can I help? Yes or no? At least I can put a question to an AI developer to tell me, can you come up with something that will really help me? Because if you help me, I will have a lot of sales because I'm using it.
Perfect. I like this a lot, Ellie. I'm going to lay out my own fundamental framework of AI and what it is and what is not. So, AI, has a long history, but basically, AI is inferences based on statistics. Okay, and statistics is just data. Data is a collection of facts or observations, right? Whether the observations are factual or not, it can be disputed. Now, because you're drawing inferences on things that you measure, you're only really good at dealing with things that are measured in some ways. So now, these days, we have language AI, which broadens what is measured a lot, but it's still things that are only measured in language. Okay. So when you and I are talking, Ellie, and there's some body language you're expressing to me, that is not really something either of us articulate, right? There might be books about body language, but those books give coarse observations, firstly. And those books are meant to be understood by humans who already have a bunch of embedded knowledge, right? If there was a book on how to walk, it would already assume you're a human who has certain physical So it's not dealing with the physics of walking as much as it's a manual for a machine that already has certain components. So there are fundamental constraints and limitations on the parameters of what language contains as such, and most of Gen AI is based on language models. Now there's image models, but they have their own limitations. We'll stick to language. Now, because AI is based on collections of observations, and because large language models are predicting the next word, they're really, really good at things that are common. Okay, so at typical cases. If, for example, customer support, where 90% of the questions you ask are the same questions, and maybe 80% of them can be solved by have you tried turning it off and turning it on again, AI is really good for that. Okay, now, in situations where there's a lot of edge, now what AI cannot do is do self-reflective critical thinking, self-reflective reasoning, questioning its own assumptions, etc. AI is really good at operating within embedded assumptions, embedded knowledge, things that are part of the current discourse. And even then AI drifts, because if people start using different language, AI won't know what it is until it's continually trained. So it has to be updated. Okay. That's the basic framework of AI. Now, so how people think about AI right now, this is the shallow version, is AI can write emails, it can make images, it can summarize documents, it can take meeting notes, it can analyze data. It's like a brain that's everywhere. It's like it's almost instant. It works 24/7. Okay, and it's like a all-in-one assistant or powerhouse. Whatever. Okay. Now let's look at it slightly differently. So you can think of AI as cognitive automation at scale, but with the caveats I already pointed to. It's not true cognitive automation. Okay, just within those parameters. Pattern recognition in complexity. So again, AI is really good. You give it a very noisy document, ask it to pick out important things. It's very good for that. Right? There are certain kinds of pattern recognition it's good for. There's certain kinds of pattern recognition is really bad for. AI cannot replace a human data analyst, because again, it involves a lot of interactive questioning the assumptions. What is the data? Do I have the right data? Can I get some other data somewhere else? Who collected this data? Let me go talk to this person. Like, those things AI cannot do. It's not agentic. It's not truly agentic. Even Sam Altman says this. Okay, probabilistic generation can generate a novel for probabilistic things, coherent content. Okay, all of this. So again, to reframe and say it one more time, AI is really good at operating within existing assumptions, within embedded paradigms, things like that. AI is not good at questioning. So TOC, the theory of constraints, is a perfect complement to AI, because it starts to actually question assumptions and go deeper. And once you have the right assumptions, the right framework, yes, AI can add speed, right? And that's what it's really good for. And it can add scale. You can have AI call somebody for a $10 product that they purchase and do customer support. You couldn't afford to do that with a human, yes, but it has to be parameterized properly. So there are some things it can do. So this is my first framing, and in the context of the power of the technology, I've laid out a little bit. Ellie, do you want to discuss this before I move ahead?
No, we can go ahead.
Okay. So what limitation does AI solve? Okay, so 90% of them are failing because they don't answer this, right? They're trying to say, let's reduce headcount, let's replace people by let's reduce our costs, right? Let's replace some people. And I've given some reasons why I can't replace people already. But if they were not clear, the thing to understand, I think very importantly, is that the companies of the future will be lightning fast. Okay, that's going to be the differentiator. The companies of the future will not be the cheapest companies that are run by one person and hundreds of AI agents, as some people have suggested. Um, the companies of the future will be lightning fast and hyper responsive to the market, and they will have what the most important thing that Goldratt identified: throughput. They will multiply throughput, and throughput is based on upside. Look, you can only reduce your cost to zero. Okay, at zero cost, you have zero profits. Okay, you cannot go below that, but you can increase your upside hypothetically to trillions of dollars. That's what the economy is worth. Upside can be trillions of dollars down, but you can only go down to zero. And so, yes, AI may at some cases reduce your operating expenses slightly, but it's actually way better to not reduce your expenses and use the humans to add safety to the speed that the AI is bringing you. And if you can do that, the upside goes up a lot. again, so let's look at some of the problems that it solves. Okay, so your best people who are better than AI still, they're not scalable. Okay, so take an example. You have a copywriter, amazing person. They can write in one language for one audience. Maybe they're writing for people in New York. Okay, but that's going to people in San Francisco or people in Texas or people in Canada who don't have the same lingo. I'm just restricting myself to English speaking North America right now. Okay. And then there's people in Australia, they have different slang, by the way. So we say, okay, what if we could take the thing that copywriter wrote and localize it to every country and every language and then every religion, every demographic? Think about how much we can distribute the expertise of this one person who's an incredible copywriter, but does not speak Hebrew, does not speak Spanish, for example. Okay, um, so that's going to be one thing. It allows you to scale some of the outputs of your best people in certain respects. Same with customer service. You can have a long tail of queries that humans, even your best sales reps, customer support, but that long tail can be embedded in a database that AI now gets. And now even that long tail is covered by the AI, and you really deal with the truly novel problems. Okay, so that's one way to think about it. Um, then another thing that AI can do is you have a lot of unstructured data. You have support tickets, call transcripts, email, market report, internal documents. Sometimes you do an analysis, but AI can do an ongoing cleanup, ongoing analysis, ongoing detect if there's an emergency, do sentiment analysis on calls, detect if a customer support agent is having problems without the need for human oversight. Okay. Another thing that AI does is it can operate 24/7, right? It can operate on holidays, even if they're national holidays, even if there's a war in a country and something is shut down, as long as electricity is working, I can continue to operate. So it also removes that limitation. Um, okay. AI is also very, very good at coming up with drafts, coming up with sort of, fairly basic things that are not truly novel, or taking somebody can talk into AI and give it a gist of what they want to say, and it's really good at predicting from that. So it can do fill in the blanks really, really well. And also, again, uh, decision making can be a lot faster for the simple things. So when it comes to dealing with customers, when it comes to a lot of things, now there are some caveats. They ran a whole business on Claude. This was a business where people were able to buy goods online, and Claude was frequently, because it got a lot of power, was talked into giving people discounts to the point where the AI, because it's too nice, it lost money. Uh, and in dealing with suppliers as well, it was not able to negotiate hard and get the best deals. So there are caveats to giving it decision making power. So I've covered two of them. I think we can have a bit of discussion before I continue, but that's sort of laying out a little bit of AI in terms of these questions.
Look, Sheikh, in a way, you have looked on the AI capabilities as they are today. I was a little bit starting to try to challenge the developers of AI to look beyond, like really looking on managerial needs in their decision, understanding uncertainty, because again, it is within the power of statistics and then repetition and a lot of things. So this thing, I believe it can do. And then if I guide it to solve problems that right now we are struggling with and we need to guess, but maybe we need better guesses. We could use AI in the future. Like what I told you about, also about trying to locate new threats. And all I want from AI is look on change of behavior, let us say of a supplier, start to tell me, because if suddenly in the last month or so the performance of this supplier went down, maybe something happened there. AI might not know what really happened there, but maybe I can find out. Can call, maybe there was a management change there, or there are some financial problems, and there is a huge sensitivity, especially in manufacturing, about even one supplier that suddenly fails to do the job, and now we are almost stuck throughout our production line. So this is of a very, very high importance. There is also to understand that AI can get knowledge very well. So from a lawyer's point of view, a what are the what happened so far, what is a regular practice, and even from time to time trying to get a little bit a new idea is already great. It can do even more. But to my mind, the idea is I will still need lawyers. I will still need judges. But all the parts are just to get the knowledge of what were the cases so far, how things were determined there, they can do to us. I don't need
Yes.
to
Yes.
take 2-3 weeks that my assistant will start looking for those kind of things. The same goes in healthcare. I mean, probably AI can be very good to do the analysis and find out exactly what you suffer from. Again, I will need the human to look at it to say it makes sense. I need it. I
Yeah.
will need it.
Yeah.
But again, fast and reliability could be extremely, I mean, diagnosis is a problem. I mean, I was a fan of the series about Dr. House. I don't know, who was kind of a crazy diagnostic doctors. And although if they would have AI, they would get possibilities uh, pretty fast, at least, with also how do you find out which one is the
Yeah.
right one?
And this is a very important, really. Well, people are better at diagnostic reasoning, asking right questions, getting more data out of the patient. AI is better at capturing long tail possibilities. So it's actually already outperforming teams of humans in terms of diagnostic capability, which is
Absolutely.
extremely impressive.
Yes, and again, if there will be some focus on AI developers to go better this way, I can, or we together, some other people can lay out what is the value to look for, and then they are looking on the target by developing the AI models for it. Also, the training, everything that needs to be taken into account when it comes to AI. So, generally speaking, look, every time with new technology, part of the question is what it can do. But then I look on the problems that I like to solve, and I like very much to put together.
Yes.
On the one hand, this is new capability. On the other hand, this is a problem I have. If this capability can significantly reduce my problem, great. But maybe it's difficult just to take it from it. I need the AI developer to make it directly usable for me for that problem. And like you say, in language they did so far, and I think you mentioned one example I've included in my presentations that I did, but I think I did it about 10 years ago. AI was not so much under it, and I was speaking about what processors that can translate pretty well and how important it could be for really relationships with businesses that speak different language. And the solutions that we have today is, for instance, the international language is English. Okay. I can ask a question, really? I don't know. When I was several times in China and I try to educate people there, I noticed that many times they understand me wrongly. it is the same English. Okay, English is not my own mother language, and certainly it's not theirs. And there are gaps here. If the gaps can be covered much better, this can be a huge value added in relationships, collaborations between people and businesses working in a different language zone. This is huge. If I can speak with you, and I would prefer to speak Hebrew, and what you will hear is English, good English. Look, quite a lot of potential problems that exist there because I am not capable to 100% express myself in the best way could
Yes.
be solved. So the question is what we are focusing at. Is this the biggest problem? If I look only on the technology, so the technology said the real power of the language models is based on statistic to assume what the next word should be. Okay, certainly does not tell me much. Does not tell me much about the limitation and about the successes. I can tell you, can this solve my problem? When I speak with my Chinese students through Zoom, and I am fully aware that many times they do not fully understand me.
Yes.
How can you express it, preferably in Cantonese or whatever
Mandarin or
Mandarin
Cantonese? Yes, of course.
language, in a way that they will understand immediately? And even notice that sometimes they use a different structure of the sentence because, again, they are different culture than us. And
Yes.
so if AI can solve this communication problem, this is huge. So,
Absolutely. Yes.
so if I can put the business case for something like this and then go to AI and say, you already are on the way, I know. Now, please solve the lot of issues that's still there because you never focused on this. If you focus on this, you will solve it pretty fast. And then this is huge value. This is the way I would like between the potential clients of AI, let us say big organization or even small organization with very energetic and good management, how to help them to do so much more money. And it is so much possible, much more than, which is also possible that they can use half or maybe even much less of their manpower and still produce the same amount of what they produce today.
Yeah.
I'm
Um,
not totally against it, except that I'm giving you the warning. Some people might not like it and they might do things about it,
right.
including a strike and some other. So I just warn you, you need to check it for yourself. But if to start with, I'm saying there is much more profitable solutions that you can get. Come on, go for it.
Yeah, I'm just going to add a bit of color to what you said. So the language thing is super important. A lot of companies have are multinational, and they have to do meetings, and they sometimes need people who are translators or who are, sometimes they need somebody who speaks that language to be the intermediary between the two teams. And now there should be much more ability to do direct communication, certainly over email. You don't have like somebody sends an email, AI can translate it perfectly. But even in live and real time, you can have pretty good translations happening. So that really makes companies that have to do global things work much more easily. The second thing which you said around the manpower, which I think is super important, is look, you can cut half your workforce, yes, but think about the trade-offs. Okay, so yes, you've improved your profits. You've not doubled them because you have other costs, but maybe your profits went up 20 to 30%. Okay, great. Now, what have you done to the company itself? The company, is it become more fragile or less fragile? Is it going to respond better to black swan events or worse to black swan events? My
Absolutely.
bet is that when you get rid of manpower, especially people who know your company well and know what they're doing, you're adding a lot of fragility to that business. And if your
Absolutely.
competitors are doing things and pivoting, you will have problems. And if you instead look at how can AI start to enable us to do more, and then how can we redeploy humans, you'll have a better time. Now, there will be caveats. There might be people who are just slowing down your business, right? You might say, well, we have all these management layers. They don't add much. They slow our business down. Maybe you say that. Or maybe you say, we have a Q&A team that's really slowing down our software development process, and we don't really need this whole team. AI can do it as well or better, and then we need a fewer number of people who can work a lot. There might be cases where you can find ways where AI makes you more agile and more responsive, and in those cases, it's worth considering perhaps reducing some of the headcount. But I would do it carefully, and I would do it with the consideration that you're reducing costs, but you're not increasing your upsides. And if you're not increasing your upside, you're going to be left behind by competition that decides to do it. Um,
Look, Sheikh, if I try to see what I need to do with my company in the next 3 years, if I take it that AI could boost my sales dramatically, can you think that the whole question, maybe it also can replace 30% of my manpower that I will call, why should I? Why should I go when I have this much, much, much more lucrative chance of having? Let us first of all go there.
exactly,
Then
because it's
I
an
can
unknown.
put with my manpower the other question, which I already hinted to. How can you use AI in order to improve your own performance?
I like that a lot. I think that's a very good point. Look, here's the thing: when you're going to do a layoff, a bunch of layoffs, you're going to have to restructure things in the company. There's going to be 6 months of change management, 1 year, even 2 years
Yes,
later, there'll be
so
effects from it.
many
And you're
negative.
slowing down the adoption of this new technology by doing this. So you're actually costing yourself quite a bit of money if you're slowing it down, and you will slow it down. The other thing is to understand is you should only do layoffs if they remove a constraint. Okay, if you have a severe cash constraint on the business, and the best way to deal with that cash constraint, rather than borrowing money or investing, is to do layoffs, then I would consider it. Um, Alternatively, if layoffs, because you're getting rid of certain departments and companies, because it just doesn't, you're getting out of certain business lines, and you're decoupling, you're selling off some subsidiary businesses, that sort of thing can make sense. But unless the headcount reduction is removing a limitation, if all you're doing is increasing profits by a certain percentage, it is generally not the best course of action that you could be taking
Absolutely,
at a point of time.
absolutely, absolutely right. Yeah.
And because it's a finite field, and when you do layoffs, that's going to cost you a significant amount of time. It's like playing chess. You make one move, you can make other moves. So you always not just want to make a move that's good move, like you are gaining on the board. You want to make the best move, because you're not playing chess with one person, you're playing chess with the whole market, right? So when you make a suboptimal move, you're allowing every, and the thing is, in the market, the wins are Pareto distributed. So if 2% of your competitors make a better move than you, you're still losing relative to the market. So the importance of making the best moves in management, and therefore to not just resort to the textbook, well, we want to make some more profit, let's do layoffs, is and especially in a time of change and new opportunity, is highly recommended.
Jake, you mentioned before a much more, for me, frightening reason not to lay off so many people, because you said, and you are right, that IB will become much more fragile. But let me also add to it. Suppose I'm firing 50% of my manpower. 2 or 3 months later, 2 or 3 of my best people come to me and give their resignation. Why? Why? Because we found something a little bit better here and there and there. And you can, I can ask them, don't you have the minimum loyalty to me? Then they could tell me. Once you fired all those people, you already showed us what loyalty means to you. So why shouldn't we take our steps? But now those 2, 3 people leaving, this is a huge damage to the company.
Companies
Uh,
measure costs, they don't measure morale, and they don't measure how hard people are working, who are their best employees. Companies are winning because, again, according to this square law principle of productivity, a square root of the number of employees you have do half the work. So if you have 1,000 employees, 30 of them are doing half the work that's actually bringing in the money for you. Okay. Now, if 2 of them leave, the cost of that is so. Suppose 3 of them leave, you've just lost. That's a big loss, right? That's 5% of your company. If 6 of them leave, that's 10% of your profits, right? Of your top line. So just think of maybe revenue. Just think about that, right? Like what are the other unmeasured effects, which everybody knows about but nobody measures, of layoffs? And is it really going to get you a benefit? We're not against layoffs, we're against bad management decisions.
Look, you need to look for what we call negative branches of any step you take. And this is a huge negative branch that may hit you back, that you are starting to be so much more fragile. The whole contract between you and your people has been broken, actually. So you need to be extremely careful about this kind of thing. And there is another one, which comes from what I said in the beginning a little bit about managing uncertainty. Look, fact is, in the vast majority of your resources, you need access. It's not you have a bottleneck and all the others have somewhat more. What can we do? We have some. No, you need the more because this gives you flexibility. Because when any small uncertain event happens, you need suddenly something else, someone else that will come and help you and whatever. And then suddenly the worker that you have laid off is suddenly missing.
Yeah,
Because
that's the other
exactly
thing.
here,
it's
I
it's a
really
very
needed, and
noisy.
we lost the business just because of this, that 2 workers became got corona, so they are at home, and here we need them face to face, and so okay.
It is a complex, just like it's hard to measure which individuals are doing what and how important they are in companies. And when you're doing a mass layoff, it's very, very hard to know who you might be losing, who might be valuable or not valuable. Um, and sometimes it is important to trim a company to streamline it, let's say. But these things have to be done with a lot more care and nuance and for really strategic reasons, not just for cost reduction. That is not, I would argue, generally an adequate reason to do layoffs.
You can easily find much better way to increase your profit than just this cost reduction.
Across the board, yes, that's just true generally. And when management attention is on playing defense rather than playing offense, that's where you're missing some of the biggest markets. And especially with technology like AI, playing defense is a great way to fall very far behind.
Absolutely, yes.
And okay, so I want to get to question 3. I know, Ellie, we've been talking for a little bit here. I'm going to recap some of the things that AI, so some of the rules that of today that consider the limitations. So we have scarce expertise, we have information overload, and we also have um, the blank page. Lots of brainstorming, lots of like, hey, can you tell me, like, can you explain the basics of this, like things that people don't know that they have to ask somebody else. These things waste a lot of time. So now, how would we reframe these things? How would we change them? So the expert's role changes. The expert goes from being the primary kind of doer of a task, for example, to being somebody who curates and edits, somebody who can kind of, you can delegate. For example, as I said, you can write. bullet points and delegate to AI, and AI can write the thing for you, right? Filling in some of the things that you should. So more and more production can be, even with programming, it's the same. AI can write the code for you, especially if you give it enough detail. So a lot of the transformation that's happening is not complete yet, and AI is still getting better, is towards the curator and editor role for experts. So now they can do a lot more. Attention feels different. Management attention is the core constraint of every business. Now it's going to feel different. And then skill set changes. Okay, the ability to write a clear, concise first draft becomes less valuable, right? So you're going to have to look at, like, critical thinking becomes very important. Prompting the AI works very becomes very important. So it like task oriented skills versus uh, inside theoretical. This is why understanding things like theory of constraints, understanding Lean or Six Sigma, understanding these frameworks for how to run a company become much more important than being good at tasks, increasingly, and critical thinking around it. And Theos is particularly good for this because you cannot just go with the old assumptions and things like that. And then yet workflows also will change. They do not become as linear. They're much more iterative and rapid, you know. And you can go through a series of decision points where you have unknowns. For example, should we sue this competitor? Okay. And we can ask it very quickly for some case law references and say yes or no. Okay. And then we go to the next thing. Okay, if we're not suing the competitor, can we run a new marketing campaign? And then like it's like, okay, what sort of, and then if we're not doing that, can we come up with a better offer? Like, do we need, so you can go through a series of these things and use AI as a thinking partner, which knows a lot more than any one person, and which is a lot faster at thinking. And really you can work through way more field of possibilities. Again, that's a strategic shift, right? There are many more changes. I've just given 3 examples, and these are mostly strategic.
But here, every management need really to go and maybe get some kind of guidance of where to start, what to put a focus for the next year or 2 or 3, because they are not going to do everything. And so comes what, if we bring in AI, what it should be used for that will bring us the highest value.
Absolutely. Um, I think that's the crucial thing. What is the highest value, and then how is this changing the company as a whole? Okay, so question 5, how to enable the change without causing resistance, right? Okay, so the biggest fear that all employees have right now is AI will take my job and make me obsolete. Guess what that does to AI implementation and adoption projects?
Absolutely.
Okay,
This was a fear also with the ERP when it came. It was a general fear from any new technology coming in. And yes, management needs to put a very clear policy about it. So try not that this reservation will not come through, at least not in full power. And there are many other reservations that needs to be tackled in order to
absolutely.
see how reliable our AI
Yes. Will
implementation is. Who can identify when it is a little bit wrong here and there? Uh, and again, where we get the full value is critical. And this parts with the question number 2, first of all, what use I will do? We raised here quite a lot of uses, including the language, including some other other ways of how to use the statistical power of AI. And we can make what is the most important right now, what could be later, what could be later, but also tell the developers of AI, you need to take into yourself not just how can I improve the technology, but what are the targets in which we will improve this technology. There will be a huge use for it because it will bring so much value.
yes, absolutely. And I want to give, taking this AI will make my jobs and skills obsolete. I just want to give one example of how you would solve this, and this would apply for some of the other ones too, is really framing it as an augmentation tool, really framing it as the employees who are using AI the best will be incentivized, or the teams that are using AI the best, or the production lines or service delivery lines, the functions that are using AI the best, they will be shown as examples, present to the rest of the company how they're using AI for success, and really making the AI adoption something that you incentivize and something you make people feel good about, and you make them feel very, very, very secure in their jobs. That will get them to adopt the change. And if you make them insecure, they will create complexity and obfuscations, which make it very hard for AI projects to succeed, because it is in their best interest that any AI adoption projects fail, because if they fail, they're like, oh, AI is not working. I guess we got to keep the people, you know? So this is another reason why working against your own companies, like the internal side, the employees, is not a good idea. And create antagonism between management and employees is not a good idea, because then they're not going to champion your best works. And there's so much untapped talent and untapped potential in companies, that is not addressed just because employees are underused. And AI can really help people get more things done, because if they have a knowledge constraint, or if they're waiting for somebody else to respond to a question, or if there's something they need to check, or if they need management approval for something, AI can really act as a distributed like assistant to help with all of those. And the long tail stuff will still go to the humans, or we'll have human in the loop. But there's a lot of ways in which AI can reduce friction in companies and make everybody a lot more productive, and make all of them more valuable. And that should be the focus. And I would go through again all of the other reason that there would be resistance, and try to solve it. And again, you can use a conflict cloud or reality tree to use also as tools for this.
Yeah, notice the potential reservations. And when you raise them, think probably there is a way to eliminate this reservation. And you need to raise it, and it is absolutely possible. We can teach it, we can show some tools, but many can also do it on their own.
Yes. And that's, I think, again, enabling the organization to do this adoption. A lot of them will be able to do it on their own, and again, it can really empowering in allowing people to figure that out. Finally, let's talk about the building, capitalizing, and sustaining the business with AI. Right? Let's talk about some ideas in that space. So, you are building a few things. Okay, one is you are building a data flywheel. You'll have more and more data over time. Now, I think data is overvalued by most people, because most people do not understand that data is only as good as what it's measuring. And mostly, it's not measuring either the right things, nor is it measuring them well. So data is only as valuable as what it's measuring and how well it's doing it. So you can have a data flywheel, but you need to measure the right things. And a lot of companies says we have all this data that has value, and usually doesn't. Okay, data often doesn't have much value, and the value it has is the non-obvious stuff. Sometimes it's like, oh, like 10% of our products are failing because of this thing that we had no idea about, that we weren't even measuring it. We just found something weird in the data, but it was not what we were looking for. Because we had a bunch of stuff that we threw at the wall, somebody with a lot of effort found something in there. But so there is one thing, a data flywheel. But much more important than a data flywheel is you have a decision-making market response, or you have a workflow flywheel where the workflows can get better and better over time. And the human in the loop is always, with the Kaizen process, it's a very similar idea. Can look at what's happening and say, oh, this was the problem, and then fix that, and then go forward. So you can have a very rapid set of iterations until those workflows are very streamlined. And then you want to control them much more and stabilize them. But there will be a lot of opportunity to use those refinements and create flywheels. Another way you can do flywheels is, of course, with advertising it and those things, because customer trends change a lot. So you can have AI generate ads, test ads, generate variations, even autonomously or with humans, but try out lots of variations, different languages, different regionals, and get way more signal back. And that's another form of winning in the market. But the most important flywheel, I also think, is a flywheel around like market capture, because brands that adopt AI today and really capture the market, may be very, very hard for other brands to disrupt later on, because they will build the right relationships with customers, vendors, distributors, etc. And so it's very, very important to create that strategic moat and the brand moat today in the market. So these are things that you can do. You can use AI to differentiate yourself. You can say we deliver proposals in hours, not weeks. We give you customer sentiment data in real time, lots of it. So there's ways in which you can really talk about how those limitation removals allow you to also come up with better mafia offers, things like that. These are all ways in which you can fundamentally rethink the business and create a sustainable competitive advantage and hopefully grow in the market rather than lose to AI competitors.
Like I said, one thing about the problem of data, this is, first of all, you have problem with the quality of the data, depending on who entered it, at what point, was it digital or what. But there is another one. Within time, quite a lot of the data become actually obsolete. It does not mean anything today. Because at that time, we were using a different machine, a different technology. So this is not relevant anymore. And this is a huge risk for any statistical calculations, which assumes that the data is good. So you need to be aware of it. And then again, if you come with the right way of thinking, you can really put what data you can rely on, what not. And if at a certain time there was a big change, you need to look back. So how much can you look back on, let us say, 2019 data? Before Corona, before the war in Europe? Look, I asked a generic question, but many times it changed the markets
Yes.
and their behavior.
Yes.
And so why do we need even to consider this amount of data?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a great point, Ellie. And the biggest problem with real world data is it's not only messy, but you don't get counterfactuals, right? You cannot do an A/B test of post like one business that's a post COVID business and one business that's a pre COVID business. Every business is a post COVID business, right?
Yes.
So you say, well, in 2018 things were like this, in 2022 things were like that, but it's very, very hard to say, okay, well, let's normalize for COVID. Let's say let's take out the COVID impact. We can't do that because
No. The COVID
supply.
impact is very
Yeah,
wide.
and the same with tariffs, the same with AI, the same with bigger. NATO spending targets have increased. That's going to affect the global market on military and military related technology. You cannot go backwards from those sorts of
You
changes.
cannot go backwards.
Yeah.
And for me, because managing under uncertainty is for me a very, very, very important topic. What COVID did, it increased all over the organization the level of fluctuations. The level of fluctuation went up dramatically. Fluctuation is what I call common unexpected uncertainty, and it is a trouble because in order to be reliable, you need to know how to treat all those small deviations that actually they accumulate, and then it hurts your reputation in the market.
Yeah. So, Ellie, this is, I think, phenomenal. I'm going to be working on a piece that's going to be based on the 6 focusing questions and AI, just like our conversation. I would appreciate if you wanted to write that together, or certainly I'll send it to you. The other thing I think would be a very useful piece of writing is focusing on both the limitations and opportunity that AI addresses, and the limitations of the technology, and then the early limitations that were there that this technology can help remove, but also the caveats in that. Because we identified, I think, at least a dozen, maybe more, different enablements and things in AI. So those are 2 things that I'll be working on as a consequence of our conversation today. Are there any other things we should touch on that we have not covered so far?
Look, we covered, but really, I think that the question about uncertainty is a big one. And I have asked some uh, 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 AI experts about can they measure uncertainty? And some of them were quite uncertain about their answer about it. Because practically what I wanted or what I look for is whenever AI gives me an answer, I like to have also the confidence level of this answer. And some of them told me, and it looked to me from my mathematical background, but long time ago, that this should be feasible. I can do it. And so even if I look on a forecast for next week, I can give me a good estimation of the conservative conservative forecast of how much we will sell versus an optimal one. So maybe I am not sure AI will need two different runs, one under the instruction of conservative and the other under instruction of optimistic. But then I have a certain measure of uncertainty, and my whole book, Throughput Economics, that I wrote with two partners, is actually trying to address it, how you come into a decision about it. But in the book, we fully rely on intuition. And I like a little bit better way if I have those tools to give me something that is, let us say, more realistic, maybe even giving me ranges that are more narrow. And so my decision will be easier.
So I think that's one of the risks of AI is that it can increase a variation in particular steps. And I think the other risk of AI is that it will, of course, increase variation across the whole company because a lot of things will change. I think AI is a much bigger disruption than COVID or even prior technologies because it's a different kind of technology
This
in
is one
some.
of the negative
Yeah.
branches that I would be very careful to check and try to eliminate from the start. And I believe it is doable. But you're absolutely right. This might, if not fully noticed and handled, bring much more uncertainty into the life, and this is not good.
Perfect. So I think that's also going to be a subject we can touch on. I'd be very, very interested going deep into variation and how AI relates to that, and then how that can be mitigated or eliminated. I think that's a fascinating subject.
Excellent, good.
Okay, Ellie, thank you so much for today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope the viewers will be as well, and hopefully we'll do a part two or something where we can delve into some further topics. But thank you so much for today.
Good. Thank you, Sheikh. I enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye bye.